A European air defense system, 9 new EU member states, and no more veto votes for EU countries. These are just a few of the German proposals for a future, more integrated European Union. Welcome back to my channel, everyone. It is Luke here, and today I have some really interesting content regarding Germany's vision for Europe. In a recent speech, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has finally broken his silence and presented 4 key points of how he would like to transform the EU. This video will go into each of these, with my opinion at the very end. His first point was EU enlargement and reform. Scholz spoke confidently of a European Union of 36 members, 9 more than we have today. He specifically mentioned the 6 Western Balkan states, some of whom have been candidates for more than 20 years. He also reiterated his support for Moldova, Ukraine and Georgia to join the bloc, but failed to mention Turkey, the oldest candidate, even once during his speech. To accommodate 9 new EU members, Scholz admitted that the EU first needs significant reform. This means, first and foremost, to abolish unanimity voting in the Council of the European Union. Currently, a single country, for instance Austria, can block legislation that all other countries agree upon. This would mean that only 9 million people could potentially hold the other 439 million Europeans hostage over certain decisions. I don't think that sounds very democratic, and neither does Scholz, because he now wants to get rid of it. He recommends qualified majority voting, where a 55% majority of countries and a 65% majority of people are needed to pass new legislation. Scholz recommends implementing this in areas such as sanctions and humanitarian rights, but then eventually moving to foreign policy and even fiscal policy. This would allow the EU to react quickly and more effectively to the problems that we face today. He also proposed changes to the Commission and Parliament, especially around the number of seats. With new EU members joining the bloc, more MEPs and commissioners will be elected. And without this spiraling out of control, a new balance of MEPs and commissioners is needed. Next up is European sovereignty, where Scholz emphasized the need for the EU to grow autonomous in all fields. I really liked his idea of pursuing a strategy made in Europe 2030. For instance, in digital technologies, where Scholz acknowledged that the EU has lost out against Silicon Valley, Shenzhen, Singapore and even Tokyo. And he's not wrong. Currently there is not one EU firm in the top 10 tech companies worldwide. To improve this, Scholz wants to focus on mobility of the future by sharing data across Europe to enable autonomous driving. On space and satellites for safety and EU-wide internet. And on more support for innovative startups so that the next SpaceX is European. Scholz also lobbied for the transformation towards a circular economy and create EU-wide common standards. Instead of only importing rare materials, we can reuse them with the millions of tons already in Europe, such as lithium and cobalt, found in our mobile phones and car batteries. And then, of course, there's climate neutrality by 2050, where Scholz believes that the EU can be a first mover and unlock unique technologies that we can export all over the world. For instance, EU hydrogen networks, or EU electric car and truck grids, or even green airports and green aircraft. But what really stole the headlines was Scholz calling for stronger EU defense capabilities. He called for joint manufacturing, procurement, and military missions. But most notably, he announced the construction of a future air defense system and invited neighbors such as the countries in orange to join the initiative. Unlike his predecessor, Scholz stopped short of supporting a European army, but he did mention that joint EU defense capabilities could become the nucleus of something bigger in the future. Scholz's third point was to find solutions to EU's most divisive issues, immigration and fiscal policy. Firstly, immigration, where Scholz makes a good point, as the Union can't seem to come up with a common EU-wide approach. Here Scholz insists on an EU-wide framework that reduces irregular entries and increases legal entries to help with the labor shortages in our hospitals and airports that we face today. He also said that it's the EU's moral duty to continue to offer asylum to people in need of protection, and to allow these people, who entered the EU legally, to travel across the internal EU borders to find work. Lastly, Scholz wants to strengthen the EU's external border and protect the EU Schengen area. He threw his support behind the applications of Croatia, Romania and Bulgaria to join the passport-free zone, as they have long fulfilled all the technical requirements. Here I think it's worth highlighting that the EU has a declining and aging population. This map shows the birth rate per woman in each European country. And as you can see, each country is far off the 2.1 needed for a population to replace itself. So immigration in the EU is becoming a necessity. The next divisive issue Scholz mentioned was fiscal policy, where Scholz insists that the EU member states need to reach a binding agreement on how to reduce the high debt levels that resulted from the corona crisis. Scholz's final point was regarding EU values, and that it worries him that there are signs of illiberal democracy, democratic backsliding, and racism right here in the middle of the EU. This part of his speech really felt like he was directly talking to Poland and Hungary, who have both been part of multiple court cases regarding EU rules of law infringements. It was clear that Scholz supported all types of countermeasures, such as blocking EU funds or even suspending the right to vote. Check out the video above for a deep dive. So there you have it, the 4 key areas that make up Germany's vision for Europe. I actually really like most of these ideas, but feel like they are very hard to implement. My favorite is replacing unanimous voting with qualified majority voting, which is critical for a quick and effective and also democratic EU. But this requires EU treaty change, which has not happened since the 2007 Lisbon Treaty, as it's a slow and difficult process. Check out this video next to me if you're interested in more information. I also really like Scholz's proposal to pursue a strategy made in Europe 2030. But again, it lacks a clear plan of action and will most probably not get support from all the member states. That is why I keep going back to Macron's multi-tiered Europe, which I believe is currently the most realistic way forward. Please subscribe and like the video if you enjoy the content. Thank you, and until next time.